Welcome back to Golden Fortune Leo, the corner of the universe where we don't just read your horoscope, we translate the emotional weather of your soul. I'm your longtime researcher, equal parts astrologer, psychologist, and storyteller, with just enough Buddhist patience to sit through the cosmic noise and find meaning in the silence. Today's reading is titled "They're Sorry, but the Universe is Teaching You Power," and yes, that sounds dramatic, but when you're Leo, drama isn't a problem, it's a personality trait. We're exploring what happens when guilt meets growth, when apology meets awakening, and when the lion decides to stop apologizing for its roar. Let's begin with the larger picture. The Year of Triumph 2025 is not merely a calendar marker, it's an initiation rite. It's the universe's way of saying, "Congratulations, you've survived the training level, now let's see what you do with your light." For Leo, this year represents a transition from survival to sovereignty, from being the performer of life to becoming its director. You've spent years making others comfortable with your brilliance, dimming your light so their insecurities wouldn't squint. This year, the cosmos has had enough of that. It's handing you a mirror and saying, "Remember who you are." Many of you, the chosen ones of the Leo realm, are learning the sacred difference between being admired and being truly understood. Everyone loves the sunlight, but very few understand the burn that comes with it. And here's where it gets beautifully human. Someone from your past feels guilty. They replay what they said, how they acted, how they let pride dress itself up as indifference. They think you hate them. You don't. You've just evolved. You've graduated from emotional school, and their syllabus expired years ago. The lesson isn't about revenge or vindication, it's about mastery. The universe is teaching you that true power doesn't come from proving your worth, but from not needing to. Forgiveness isn't a favor you give others, it's freedom you return to yourself. Now, before we get too serious, let's admit it, healing is messy. It's not lavender candles and spa music. It's more like trying to brush a lion's mane during a thunderstorm. But it's worth it. Every time you choose peace over pride, every time you let silence speak louder than your anger, your crown grows steadier. So take this reading not as a warning, but as a coronation. You're not losing people, you're gaining perspective. You're not becoming cold, you're becoming clear. And if someone feels the heat of your boundaries and mistakes it for hatred, remind yourself, the sun doesn't apologize for shining. Welcome to your chapter of transformation, Leo. The universe isn't punishing you. It's polishing you. At the heart of this reading, Leo, lies the archetype of the Empress, the eternal nurturer, the mother of creation, beauty, and life itself. It's the card of someone who gives without keeping score, who holds the center when everything else feels like it's about to collapse. And in this case, that someone is you. You've been the glue holding together families, friendships, and workspaces that might have crumbled without your warmth. You've built homes, raised people, run businesses, and steadied storms that weren't even yours to calm. You've done it with style too, because Leos never just survive, they do it with flair, lipstick unbothered, mane intact. But even the most radiant sun can burn out when it forgets that shining constantly takes fuel. What I sense around you now is not failure but fatigue, that deep, bone-level exhaustion that comes not from lack of love but from loving too much, too often, too freely. You've been giving from a cup that has quietly run dry, pouring into everyone else's garden while your own roots thirst for water. If you've noticed lately that people expect you to just handle it, to fix, manage, forgive, or rescue without complaint, that's your Empress energy stretched past its natural rhythm. It's noble, but it's unsustainable. The universe, kind though it is, has a funny way of teaching balance. It will keep sending the same kind of draining situations until you finally say, "No, actually, this time I choose me." The lesson here isn't about becoming colder, it's about remembering that warmth without boundaries turns into wildfire. You're not meant to save everyone. You're meant to lead by example, and sometimes that means showing others how to save themselves. Now, the challenge before you is embodied by the Two of Pentacles, a juggler's card if there ever was one. You're balancing work, emotions, family, ambition, and possibly someone else's emotional baggage disguised as a small favor. The irony of Leo energy is that it loves being dependable. You thrive when others need you, but at the same time, that very quality can morph into a trap. Your compassion makes you say yes even when your intuition whispers no. You tell yourself you'll rest after one more task, one more errand, one more crisis, and then the universe throws another ball into the air. At some point, even the strongest lion gets tired of juggling flaming torches. This card isn't warning you to stop, it's inviting you to choose. The universe is not testing how much you can carry, Leo. It's teaching you to recognize what's worth carrying. When life feels heavy, it's usually because you're holding things that no longer belong to you, outdated roles, other people's guilt, old promises you've outgrown. Those trouble and accusations moments, the arguments, the misunderstandings, the passive-aggressive comments, they're not punishments. They're cosmic nudges. Each conflict is like a little bell ringing, asking, are you still playing peacekeeper in a war that doesn't need to be fought? To understand how you got here, we turn to the Four of Pentacles, the card of clinging. It represents that part of you that holds on to the familiar even when it's past its expiration date. Maybe you've held on to a relationship that once brought warmth but now only brings weight. Maybe you've clung to stability so tightly that it started to suffocate your creativity. Leos are famous for loyalty, that royal quality that makes you defend the people you love long after they've stopped deserving the throne. But there's a fine line between loyalty and self-betrayal, and 2025 seems determined to teach you where that line lies. You might recognize the pattern. You're the one saying, it's fine, I'll handle it, while your spirit whispers, but what about me? You cover for others, explain their behavior, rationalize their absence, all because your heart has mistaken endurance for love. The cosmic truth, however, is sharper and kinder. Sometimes love means letting go. Sometimes stability means allowing change. The universe doesn't dismantle things to punish you, it does so to make room for better architecture. If something or someone has recently slipped from your grasp, it may not be a loss but a recalibration. Spirit is rebalancing the scales you've been holding unevenly for too long. And now, here you stand in the present moment, beneath the heavy shadow of the Ten of Wands, a card that feels almost autobiographical for Leo. Picture it, the noble one, golden heart blazing, carrying the whole stage set alone while everyone else takes bows. You handle the bills, the logistics, the emotional labor, and still show up smiling because that's what people expect from you. You've become the hero and the stage crew of your own story, and the applause doesn't sound quite as good when you're too tired to enjoy it. Yet there's something powerful hidden in that exhaustion. The universe never wastes effort. Every weight you've carried has been sculpting your backbone, chiseling away the parts of you that confuse being needed with being valued. What you're learning now, painfully, beautifully, is the difference between sacrifice and self-erasure. You've spent years thinking that to love deeply, you had to shrink quietly. But the truth is, real love doesn't require you to disappear. It asks you to stand fully present, clear-eyed, and grounded. Here's the plot twist most people miss: when you finally decide to drop even one of those burdens, the world doesn't fall apart. It simply reorganizes around your truth. You'll be surprised how quickly the people who claimed they couldn't function without you suddenly remember how to. And those who can't adjust? Well, maybe they were meant to exit your story once the lesson was complete. Psychologically, what you're experiencing is the turning point between burnout and awakening. You've reached the point where doing more no longer fixes anything. Your system is demanding authenticity over obligation. This is where self-worth becomes not a mantra but a boundary. It's where you stop performing strength and start embodying wisdom. Think of it as emotional physics. The more space you clear, the more energy you regain. In Buddhist terms, this is the middle way, learning that compassion without wisdom leads to suffering. You can care deeply and still protect your peace. You can give generously and still keep something for yourself. The Empress within you doesn't disappear when you rest, she regenerates. The universe, ever the patient teacher, is showing you that taking care of yourself is not selfish, it's sacred maintenance. And yes, if we were being honest, Leo, you're hilariously bad at resting. You rest the way some people diet, with enthusiasm for 3 hours before checking if it's working. You'll sit down to meditate and suddenly remember 6 people you haven't texted back. But that's part of your charm. You're wired for action, for creation, for motion. What's shifting now is the motivation behind it. You're moving from proving to expressing, from reacting to responding. So here's the gentle advice from someone who's watched many suns burn and rise again: put one of those wands down. Let the world wobble for a moment. Watch how quickly it balances itself without your constant intervention. The lion doesn't chase validation, it radiates presence. And when you finally stop apologizing for needing rest, for saying no, for choosing peace over performance, you'll realize the throne you've been searching for was never out there, it's been inside you all along. That, Leo, is the real triumph of this year. Not the applause, not the success, not even the forgiveness. It's the quiet recognition that you're enough, even when you do less. It's remembering that love doesn't require exhaustion, and that the most powerful roar is often the one whispered in self-respect. The next chapter of your story, Leo, opens with the Judgment card, a moment that doesn't whisper but rings like a bell through the chambers of your soul. Judgment arrives when the performance ends, when the masks slip, and the heart finally says, enough pretending. It's the Phoenix moment, the second sunrise after a long, smoky night. This isn't about karma coming for you, it's about truth coming through you. Judgment is never gentle, but it's always just. For some of you, this awakening comes in the form of reconciliation. Someone from your past, a person who once basked in your warmth as if it were eternal summer, finds themselves haunted by winter. They remember the sound of your laughter, the steadiness of your loyalty, the way you believed in them when they barely believed in themselves. And now, standing in the ruins of what they once took for granted, they realize the cost of your absence. They're sorry. Maybe sincerely. Maybe too late. But either way, they feel it. Yet, here's the lesson the universe insists you learn: their guilt isn't your closure. Healing doesn't require their apology, it requires your understanding. You don't evolve because they're sorry, you evolve because you finally see the pattern. Forgiveness, real forgiveness, doesn't mean you leave the door open. It means you stop living in a house built by their memory. You don't owe anyone another round in a game you've already outgrown. Letting go doesn't make you heartless, it makes you free. Think of it as evicting bad energy that's been subletting space in your head rent-free. Psychologically, this is a textbook moment of individuation, the point where you stop identifying with your wounds and start identifying with your wisdom. In spiritual terms, this is the rebirth after the fire. You are the phoenix that realizes the ashes were never punishment, they were fertilizer. And as your spirit rises, you might notice that the need for revenge has quietly turned into curiosity. You begin to wonder not how they'll make it up to you, but what kind of peace you can build now that you've stopped waiting. Then comes the Lovers, the most misunderstood card in the deck. People think it's about romance, but it's really about choice, the soul's great decision point. Do you follow your heart, or do you follow your history? For Leo, This moment is crucial because your loyalty runs deep. You'd rather wrestle a storm than admit a connection has run its course. But the cosmic script for you this season is clear. One path leads back to the comfortable pattern of overgiving, while the other leads to radical honesty. The first path says, maybe they'll change. The second says, maybe I don't need them to. The first looks familiar. The second feels frightening. Yet it's the second one that leads to liberation. You may still love this person, or at least the version of them you once knew. The connection may still hum faintly like a distant radio signal. But love without reciprocity, Leo, is performance art, and you've outgrown the role of the unpaid emotional actor. Remember who you are. You're the sign that rules the heart, not because it's fragile, but because it's fearless. You don't chase love, you magnetize it by standing tall. Real love will meet you at your level. Anything that asks you to shrink, dim, or bend is not love, it's a negotiation for your light. As you choose truth over nostalgia, the energy around you shifts into the Four of Wands, the card of peace and belonging. This is where the stage lights soften and the music slows. The chaos settles. What's left is stability, not the brittle kind that depends on other people's moods, but the quiet kind that comes from inner alignment. For some, this manifests physically: a new home, a move, a living space that finally feels like an extension of your soul rather than a cage for your stress. For others, it's emotional: a newfound calm that feels almost suspicious after months of turbulence. You may find yourself at gatherings, weddings, family reunions, community events, and realize how much you've grown. You'll see faces that once intimidated you and feel nothing but neutrality. You'll visit places that once made you ache and feel gratitude instead. You might even laugh and think, I used to cry in this energy, now I breathe. That's not arrogance, that's arrival. The payoff for all your inner work is peace that can't be stolen, because it no longer depends on external approval. Then there's the Six of Pentacles, the universe's way of balancing its books. After all the giving you've done, Spirit has decided it's time for deposits to exceed withdrawals. If you've felt underpaid, underappreciated, or underloved, this is the month the scales begin to tip in your favor. The repayment may not come from the same hands that took from you, but it will come. An unexpected opportunity, financial help, emotional support, or simple acts of generosity may appear just when you've stopped expecting them. Sometimes the universe uses people to deliver blessings. Other times, it uses timing. Either way, energy never disappears, it just reroutes itself to the deserving. If someone owes you money, respect, or an apology, they feel it. Even if their pride keeps their mouth shut, the energy moves. Karma doesn't lose receipts, and it certainly doesn't miss addresses. This isn't about revenge, it's about restoration. The universe, in its quiet efficiency, knows how to even the score without you lifting a royal finger. From a psychological lens, this is what we'd call a period of emotional restitution. Your subconscious, after years of depletion, is finally rewriting its story from I'm used to I'm valued. The confidence returning to you isn't new, it's original. It's the version of you that existed before the disappointments, before the doubts, before you started mistaking endurance for love. From a Buddhist perspective, this entire chapter reflects the law of cause and effect, karma not as punishment, but as education. Every action plants a seed, and every seed flowers when the time is right. The beauty is that you are no longer obsessed with when or how it blooms. You trust the timing because you've become the gardener, not the beggar. So laugh a little, Leo. The universe is funny like that. It waits until you stop begging for closure to hand you peace. It waits until you stop trying to prove your worth to flood you with opportunities that confirm it. You may even find humor in how life works, how the moment you stop checking your phone for that message, it finally arrives. Cosmic irony is one of the universe's favorite teaching tools. As this phase unfolds, remember that everything happening now is a reflection of your growth. The Judgment card freed you from illusion. The Lovers challenged your loyalty to outdated versions of love. The Four of Wands restored your peace. The Six of Pentacles reminded you that balance always returns. Together, they form a cycle of awakening, from burden to clarity, from giving to receiving, from longing to knowing. And through it all, you remain the constant, the lion who learns not by roaring louder but by standing still long enough to hear the heartbeat of the universe echo back, you were never behind, you were always becoming. That, Leo, is your triumph in 2025, not revenge, not reconciliation, but radiant self-respect wrapped in laughter, wisdom, and grace. The Five of Swords is that unavoidable scene in every great story where tension stops being background noise and becomes the lesson itself. It's the card of confrontation, but not the reckless kind that seeks to wound, it's the courageous kind that seeks to wake. Maybe you've been the quiet hero in every room, carrying emotional, financial, or even spiritual weight that no one else seemed to notice. You did it because you're capable, because it's easier to take responsibility than to watch things fall apart. But then one day, you said the words that changed everything, "I can't keep doing this alone." And suddenly, silence fell like a curtain. You could hear the air shift. That silence, my dear Leo, wasn't rejection, it was recognition. It was the sound of truth entering the room. For years, you've been the one who smooths the rough edges, who explains, forgives, organizes, and repairs. The problem is, when you cushion others from the natural consequences of their actions, they start to believe gravity doesn't apply to them. And when you finally stop doing that, when you reclaim your energy and say no, they call you difficult. Let them. You're not being difficult, you're being honest. The world has simply grown accustomed to your overextension. You've trained people to think your generosity is infinite, and now they're startled to learn that even the sun sets. That's the paradox of Leo energy. Your light is so abundant that others forget it's voluntary. Sometimes, your roar is misread as aggression, but in truth, it's just self-respect clearing its throat. You've reached a point where silence would no longer be noble, it would be self-erasure. And so, the argument, though uncomfortable, becomes medicine. This isn't about winning or losing, it's about recalibration. The confrontation is not chaos, it's truth reclaiming its rightful place. The Five of Swords teaches that peace built on dishonesty is just a pause before the next explosion. Real harmony only emerges after honesty has had its say. From a psychological perspective, this entire dynamic describes empathic burnout. You've been living in what therapists call hyper-responsibility mode, believing that if you don't manage everything, work, emotions, relationships, outcomes, the world will tilt off its axis. That's not altruism, that's anxiety dressed as purpose. Somewhere along the way, you absorbed the false belief that love equals labor, that your worth is measured by how much you fix. But here's the truth every healer eventually faces: you can't save anyone who benefits from staying broken. The ego tells you that your effort will change people, wisdom tells you that awareness will. This is where Buddhist psychology enters the chat, specifically the teaching of Sayadaw Tejaniya, who reminds us that awareness does the work, not effort. You don't have to force change. You don't even have to chase peace. You just have to stop resisting it. Letting go doesn't mean indifference, it means trust. It's the quiet confidence that says, I don't need to control this for it to resolve. You're allowed to rest. You're allowed to say not today. You're allowed to put the weight down and watch the universe prove it never needed you to carry it all anyway. And then, almost poetically, the Page of Cups enters the picture, a messenger of vulnerability, softness, and new emotional beginnings. For some of you, this will manifest as an apology. Someone who once dismissed your effort will return, humbled, saying things like, I didn't realize how much you did, or I'm sorry for making you feel alone. The irony is, you'll hear those words and realize you've already moved past needing them. That's growth. The apology is still meaningful, but it no longer defines your healing. You've already learned the lesson. Closure doesn't come from their confession, it comes from your comprehension. The beauty of spiritual maturity is that you can appreciate someone's regret without letting it rewrite your boundaries. This is your quiet victory in the year of triumph 2025. It's not the cinematic kind with fireworks and fanfare, it's the subtler kind that happens when you realize you no longer react. The same things that once triggered you now pass through you like wind through open doors. You're lighter because you've stopped collecting other people's lessons as your own. In the moral landscape of this reading, Leo, you are once again revealed as the teacher disguised as the student. Even your heartbreaks have become classrooms for others. The person who wronged you learned more from your absence than they ever did from your presence. You've been the mirror that showed them who they were, and when you walked away, they were forced to look at themselves without your reflection softening the view. That's the real teaching. You educate through example. This month, your silence becomes your sermon. You won't need revenge, explanations, or justifications. Your energy does the talking. When you stop arguing and start embodying truth, the contrast becomes undeniable. From a social psychology standpoint, this is also a moment of power realignment. People who once held authority over you emotionally or otherwise are beginning to sense the shift. You've stopped orbiting around them, and now they have to feel the gravity of their own actions. That's the nature of growth, it changes the geometry of relationships. Some will rise to meet you. Others will fade, unable to handle your new altitude. Either way, it's not loss, it's alignment. The reading concludes with the card that ties it all together, the gentle but firm message to have faith in your dreams. Even when plans delay, when people disappoint, or when momentum feels sluggish, trust that the universe is rearranging the stage for your next act. You're not falling apart, you're rehearsing for a larger role. The chaos you're experiencing isn't random, it's direction disguised as disorder. Spirit is whispering, refine your part, Leo. The spotlight is almost yours again. Think of life right now as a play in revision. The arguments, delays, and detours are just the director's notes. You're not the understudy anymore, you are the lead, and the script is being rewritten to reflect that truth. You're shedding roles that once kept you small, the caretaker, the fixer, the people pleaser. The shedding process feels messy, but that's only because you've mistaken decay for destruction. You're not breaking down, you're molting, releasing what no longer fits your next evolution of brilliance. And yes, it's okay to laugh through it. Cosmic transformation is rarely glamorous. Growth often looks like mismatched socks, late-night journaling, and saying no in sentences that tremble a little. But humor is part of healing. If you can laugh at your old patterns, you've already transcended them. So go ahead, smile at how far you've come. You no longer mistake exhaustion for loyalty. You no longer confuse silence with peace. You've learned that sometimes the loudest roar is the one that says nothing at all. In this season, your greatest act of courage is rest. Your greatest act of rebellion is peace. And your greatest victory is realizing that you don't need to fight to be free, you just need to stop explaining why you deserve to be. The heart of this message, Leo, lies in one of life's most uncomfortable paradoxes. People who feel guilty often assume you hate them. Spiritually, this is projection in its purest form. When someone cannot face their own remorse, they imagine that you are the source of judgment, when in truth you have already moved on. What they are experiencing is not your resentment but their reflection. Your soul has long since dropped the need for grudges. It doesn't hold anger, it holds understanding. What they perceive as hatred is simply the outline of your boundaries, glowing quietly where they once crossed them. For those of you who walk the deeper path, the so-called chosen ones, this pattern feels familiar. People misread your distance as coldness, but in reality it's discernment. You no longer chase approval because you have made peace with yourself. When you stop auditioning for love, the right people recognize you without the script. Now, before we all get too celestial, let's take a brief detour into the ridiculous, because the universe loves a good laugh and Leos happen to deliver some of the best comedy. If Burnout were an Olympic sport, you'd sweep the podium, then offer to design the trophies. You're the one who says, "Sure, I'll plan the event, mediate the family feud, save the planet, and make it all look effortless." You do it wearing metaphorical heels on a tightrope while holding everyone else's to-do list. But Spirit has left you a sticky note on the refrigerator of fate: delegate or dissolve. Even the brightest star needs darkness to glow against. Even queens need quiet. Even suns need sunsets. The next time someone asks you to take on yet another project that makes your inner child sigh, just smile and say, "I'd love to help, but my crown's in the shop." It's amazing how quickly people remember their own capabilities when the royal repair shop is booked. The cosmic forecast for the weeks ahead shows calmer emotional weather. The misunderstandings that drained you earlier this year are beginning to correct themselves. People who once underestimated your steadiness will soon recognize its worth. A friend, partner, or colleague may finally step up, not with empty words but with concrete support, financial or emotional. If you are moving homes, launching a business, or reviving a creative vision, expect the second half of October to bring renewed drive. The ladder of success that once wobbled under the weight of other people's baggage will feel stable now that you've stopped hauling their suitcases. By November, you'll look back and realize the chaos was never punishment, it was precision. Every clash, every delay, every tear was simply the universe adjusting your alignment. What felt like conflict was calibration. This leads to the kingdom within, the true seat of Leo's power. In myth and astrology alike, the lion rules not through dominance but through radiance. The heart, not the crown, is the center of your empire. When your heart shines in truth, the outer world reorganizes naturally. So, take a moment to ask yourself some questions that act as mirrors for the soul. Where have I been giving from fear instead of joy? Who benefits from my silence more than I do? What would change if I offered myself the same loyalty I give to everyone else? These are not rhetorical puzzles, they are your spiritual diagnostics for the year of triumph 2025. The answers may arrive quietly, in dreams or coincidences, but when they do, they'll feel like remembering something you've always known. Dear Leo, this reading was never about someone else's guilt. It's about your graduation from emotional overwork to emotional sovereignty. The fire you've walked through wasn't there to destroy you but to refine you. You are the gold being purified in the forge of experience. Every no you finally said was a prayer disguised as rebellion. Every boundary you drew was a declaration of peace. Soon you will rest, and when you do, you will receive not scraps of affection or overdue apologies, but abundance that matches your worth. Forgive those who failed you, not because they deserve it but because peace is too precious to postpone. Love them, but at a distance wide enough to protect your light. When they misinterpret your calm as cruelty, smile softly. You've simply evolved beyond the language of their understanding. And here lies the final truth, the lion's lesson. The universe never tests your strength, it reveals it. Every accusation, burden, and misunderstanding this year has been a sculptor's chisel, carving away pretense to reveal the essence beneath. As the storm clears, clarity follows like dawn after thunder. The ones meant to walk beside you will return, not to lean on you but to stand with you. You will step into November with lighter hands and a fuller heart, your crown no longer an emblem of struggle but of sincerity. When a Leo learns to love without losing themselves, the entire world adjusts its orbit. You become the light after the thunder, the roar after the silence, the embodiment of grace wrapped in flame. You are one of the chosen ones walking boldly through the year of triumph 2025, fierce, forgiving, and free. So, as you leave this reading, I encourage you to enjoy your life again. Celebrate the ordinary miracles, the laughter that sneaks up on you, the meal that tastes better because you cooked it for yourself, the afternoon nap that feels like rebellion. Do not treat joy as a reward you must earn, treat it as your natural state. The universe didn't design you to be exhausted, it designed you to be radiant. Thank you, beautiful lions, for spending this time with Golden Fortune Leo. If this message stirred something in you, let it settle quietly before you act. Healing doesn't need to be rushed, it just needs to be real. And when you're ready, share this light with others, like, comment, and subscribe to Golden Fortune Leo so our pride of wisdom and humor keeps growing. Tell me where you're listening from and what part of your journey you're reclaiming. I read every message, and together we remind the world that astrology isn't about fate, it's about awareness. Until next time, stay luminous, stay kind, and remember, the universe never takes without giving back in gold. All you have to do is keep your heart open enough to roar, rest, and rise again.